Good morning. Well, wonder what all this foam is for. What could have come packed in a box with all this foam? Big. Looks like it was probably pretty heavy. After waiting almost 4 or 5 months, I finally got, turn this camera around here, see if we can get in here. My Nova DVR upgrade for my Nova 1624-44 lathe. This is a DVR motor. This is the controller. I've got all the instructions, and we're going to walk through the process of how long this thing takes to change. I'm going to try to include, most of it is pretty mundane, it looks like. It's pretty straightforward. We'll have to take the old motor off, take the motor cover off, take the pulley off, remount the pulley and the face plate on this motor. After the motor is remounted, then mount the control box, plug it in and go. It should not take a long period of time to do this, but I will try to give an honest estimate on how much time I'm spending actually doing this and in the actual problem areas that I run into. There's a couple of screws on the motor cover which are a little hard to get to. Those will probably be a little bit of a problem. And then actually taking the pulley off is just a process of going slow and knowing what to do. This is the protection on the motor shaft. Main thing you have to pay really close attention to is there is a key slot cut in the motor shaft, and then a hole in the center. This looks to be pretty straightforward to do. It was packed, arrived here well. Interesting, this is the motor final inspection report in English and what I assume is Chinese, since I don't read Chinese. And what I was told back in March and April time frame is the motor that I wanted was on its way. It had been shipped, and that it was going to take a little while to get here. And I was told that several different times. Well, it finally got here, so I'm happy with that. But if you'll notice down on the bottom of the page, it says 5/17/2016 is the date that they actually tested the motor and passed it through QC. So it was not built and finished in China until the middle of May. Anyway, I have it. Glad to have it. Looking forward to putting this on, and hopefully this will give you a little bit of insight what it takes, what I find along the way, the good, the bad, and the ugly. As you can see, using the wooden shims just didn't work. Didn't work at all. Somebody online had suggested using a cold chisel. Couldn't find mine. Looked around in my tools, found a hatchet. Turn the hatchet on the side, acts like a cold chisel. Sit there and work from each side like doing here until you get such a gap that you can't make it go up anymore. Put the wood shims back underneath it. Keep it going. Just keep working at it, going from side to side, and you'll be able to pull the pulley off of there. Works pretty good for me. Shouldn't take you more than about 4 or 5 minutes to get your pulley off if you do something like this. I didn't want to try to mount it in a vise and try to pry it. I just don't like prying on things like that. So using the side of the hatchet just as a wedge going in here seemed to work fine, and I was able to get the pulley off without too much trouble. And once I got it almost about 80% off, it just popped off. Yeah, it was pretty stuck on there for a long time. And there it is, off. All right, success. There's the keyway. Now we take the faceplate off.
On August 16, 1977, you remember? That is when we lost the king of rock and roll. They're celebrating his life this week.
Oh man!
Memphis at the newly remodeled Graceland. And I think everybody remembers where they were when they heard the news the king had died. I happened to be in Appleton, Wisconsin. Walked into a liquor store.
I'm going to need to get a right angle, shorter one to break these screws loose because they are really tough. All right, let's see here. I just have it placed on there for the moment. That looks like it's going to be in the right position, but what I'm going to do is check my photographs to make sure this is what it looks like, so I don't have to change that that shaft again. It should be at the bottom, not at the other location. So it looks like I'm going to have to take it off and turn it around 180 degrees. It shows the control box. Mine, it shows a control box up here. Has no controls on it. It just plugs into the other part, which is going to mount up here. So I need to do 180 on this and put it on the other way so the control box is on the bottom. So it's just a discrepancy in the picture because this is a newer design box. It's a little different. and we'll take care of it. Well, best laid plans of mice and men don't always work. Faceplate was not on there correctly. It had the power box in the wrong place, so I had to take it off and put the faceplate back on again. Actually, even when I did this, I wound up having it about 45 degrees in the wrong direction. The box wound up pointing down at the bottom of the motor. It should be on the back of the motor as you face the lathe. If you'll see later on in the video where I talk about that a little bit more. The other point here is that when you're going to put the faceplate on and take the faceplate off, do yourself a favor, get the right angle Allen head screwdriver so that you can get the torque on the short end of that and put it together and position it. Should go just go slowly before you put the pulley back on. Once you put the pulley back on, you don't want to do that again. All right, it's the next day. I'm back in the shop. Read the manual. Putting this back on the lathe should be a pretty straightforward proposition. The flange is mounted back on. The pulley is mounted and tightened down. The power connector and everything that drives the DVR is already pre-assembled. The switch box, I will have to find a place to mount. There are some screws on different parts of this where I can probably mount it, but I'll figure that out afterwards, and I'll have to find a couple of screws that fit the screw holes here. I'll certainly call Teknatool tomorrow and say, you know, it's really nice. I got this nice black box. It's got a mounting bracket on it. I got mounting brackets on the motor and everything, and no hardware to connect the two up. I think I can find a couple of screws, bolts that will go in there that will work fine, but I'll worry about that in a little while. So the procedure in the manual, basically, I'm going to put the motor back on, put the cam back on. Once the motor and the cam are back on, then what I will do before I tighten everything down is I'll put the red cover back on, the screws that go on it, hook the belt back up, and then I'll have to deal with the mounting of the rest of it. So I'll turn the camera around so we can record putting this back on. It's pretty straightforward. Shouldn't be much to it. The most see if I can see this. The most curious or the most thing to pay attention to is I cleaned out my motor enclosure area here, and this thing is ready to go. And let me slip the motor on, and we will go from there. Alright, motor slips in there. And if you're lucky, like I am, the belt will just fall on there. Not sure that I like the position that I have on this, but we'll go for it at the moment. I've left enough gap to put the cover on. See if this goes back on properly. Pretty straightforward. So right now, it's all hooked up. Get right where I am here. There we are. Where you can see the screen. So I have it set at 450 RPMs. It's off because I pressed the red button to say off. I've already had the power on. I mounted with the two number 6 1.0 10 millimeter long screws with a flat washer and a lock washer. That seemed to be the right screw length. I took this bracket that's on the bottom, I took the bracket that's back here, disconnected it from the power head, mounted that, and then mounted the power head to it, hooked up the cables, plugged it into the wall. Everything worked fine. So let me zoom back in here. So I have this set at 450 RPMs, and as you can see, I can just crank it up. It goes from 450 to 550. I don't have anything in the chuck at the moment, and what this does is gives me a good ramp up, I believe. That's 550 RPMs. I have a little run out on my spindle. Not much, but a little bit. I need to check that. Anyway, that's 550 RPMs. Switch back. $10.50, $1,600. That's pretty smooth. Right now it's only running on a 5% load. 1850, 22,000, 2250, 2,500. What I'm going to do is set it at 1250 and we'll turn it off. Comes to a stop fairly quickly. And what I'm going to do is turn it on. It should go from 0 to 1250. It won't hit 1250 immediately. It's got a ramp up time on it. Not much of a ramp up, but it's got a ramp up on it. I haven't read the manual on how to set my presets. Forward and reverse. I'm going to turn this off. Reverse is ready. Running in reverse just fine. 550. 250. I'm a happy camper. Power off. Warning, low voltage. Of course it's low voltage, it's turned off. I have to check on that. That is really strange. There it is. Gets a low voltage because the power drains off of the capacitors and everything off of the motor. So it's installed. I'm going to say, not counting having to go to Home Depot to get the screws or all of the cursing that I did because I didn't have screws with this, that this is about an hour, maybe an hour and 15, hour and 30 minutes. If you take your time and do this, you can do this by yourself. If the motor's a little heavy for you, get somebody to help you. And definitely think about taking the control box off of the mounting panel that it's on. Mount the panel to the motor, then mount the box back to the panel. I think that works a lot better that way. And you'll probably look at it and understand that I'm going to probably wind up doing the same thing that a number of people have done, and that's lengthen the cables. It's not hurting anything in the configuration that I have right now, but where I thought the motor needed to be on the faceplate, I really wish I would have rotated it a little bit further. Right now, you can see at the bottom, let me get something to point with. How about a chisel? That'll work. You can see, here's my pointer. This is the control box. This is the power box. This feeds the motor down here. So there's two cables coming out of it. In the configuration I have, the motor, this is down, pointing down when it's mounted. What I should have done is rotated the faceplate about another 90 degrees. This would face out the back. It would give me a little bit longer cables on the control head, and it would still allow me to connect that. So I would say that pay close attention to that, and you want to do that before you put your pulley back on. So once you put the pulley back on, you don't want to take it all apart to do it over again. I'm not. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this. Hope it's been helpful. All in all, not a bad situation. Pretty easy for me to do. I actually thought I might be down for a day or two doing this changeover. I could have done it almost any afternoon I wanted. Thank you.